making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Ark Wassell, the founding host of the podcast, and I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker. And my first feature film, The Alternate, is coming out this year, 2022. Don't have a release date yet, but it'll be there for your eyeballs to see.
I'm Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, Bread and Butter and Speed of Life, and I'm currently in development on about 5 more. I'm a distribution consultant who used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative.
This week, we welcome director Luis Prieto on the show to talk about directing his latest film, Shattered, and how he made the jump from directing comedies in Italy to directing thrillers in Hollywood. And there's way more to this story. It's very exciting. It was just really great to hear about how hard it was, like when he had such success in Italy, to make it to America back, because he went to school in Hollywood. He went all around the world making movies before he came back to where he wanted to be in LA, doing his thing. But yeah, really loved the conversation. After that, we discussed an article about the Golden Globes not being aired, which I had no idea happened because I never watched the Golden Globes. And I was like, oh, Golden Globes happened. Encanto won for Best Animated. Cool. And then, wait, I read this article. I was like, what? Okay. And then after that, we answer another listener email, which is amazing that we've gotten 2 back to back. But first, before all that, Liz, how are you doing?
How am I doing? I'm doing well. We had a major COVID scare in our house this weekend and early this week. And today is the first day that my son is back in daycare full time this week. And it is a massive, massive difference in my life. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel a lot of guilt as a parent putting my child in daycare in the middle of the Omicron surge, especially in Los Angeles. And I've been entertaining all these thoughts like, well, maybe I'll just take him out for a few weeks until the end of January. And then he got a stomach flu and daycare thought it was COVID. And we had to kind of undergo all these things. And having him home for 5 days straight, including the weekend, was too much to bear is, I think, what I'm acknowledging. It was just so much to balance work and life and the kiddo and a pandemic and, and vomit and diarrhea and all of these things all at the same time. So that's what I'm thinking about is how do you maintain a freelance lifestyle when there's nothing stable and you're in the middle of pure chaos and you just want to do right by your child? How are you?
So no COVID then in the end?
No COVID. 2 negative tests, totally fine. He complained of a stomach ache at daycare and they called me and they were like, diarrhea is a symptom. And I was like, okay, well, we'll take him out and we'll get him tested. And turns out he just wanted to watch Encanto all day. So it's just like this, he now knows that he could say he has a stomach ache and he won't have to, not watch television for 8 hours.
Yeah, I was hearing from my brother that his kids will exaggerate when they're feeling sick often. And it's like you can't do that because then you're basically going to get kicked out of school. If you say you have oh, I'm feeling sick, I've got a runny nose. They're like, don't say that because your nose is actually not runny. And you're just saying that because you want me to give you attention and you're not actually sick. And it's just oh man, so crazy. Yeah, I've heard similar stories from my family about our friends of, kids in their schools getting COVID and then them taking their kids out of the school because they're like, oh, well, there's COVID going around. We don't want to even expose them. So then lots of kids being at home right now. My kid is 6 months old. So, it's a lot easier. I don't know. Imagine what it's going to be like when she's 1 or 2 and trying to do what we're doing now. Because basically we're not doing daycare yet. We may do it at some point, but for now it's we're just juggling it, I'll take over sometimes. My wife will take over other days. We've got this whole really crazy loosey-goosey process. So far, so good. But it's only because she's taking long naps right now. When the naps
she's
go
not
away,
walking either, right? So
she's
rolling,
not walking.
I assume.
She's rolling. I create a little barricade behind me when I'm watching her, and she'll just roll around in her barricaded area and not go anywhere. And it works great. But that's not going to last for much longer. So I dread what's going to happen when she's more mobile. We'll see. I mean, we'll just adjust.
Well,
and there is a daycare down the street, so
we might have vaccines for under 5s by that time. Honestly, that's what's so crazy about the situation we're all in right now.
Yeah. But I'm doing well. I've been thinking a lot lately about big questions in life, like like, as filmmakers, we're chasing this dream of like, being a successful filmmaker and like, being paid to make movies and like that being your career. But then like, you think about your success and like what that would actually mean. Like if I actually did get what I want, like would I even want that thing? Like, do I want to be so busy that I'm like away from my family all the time? Like, do I even want that lifestyle that I'm like searching for? It's like, is there a version of my dream that coincides with what I actually want to do with my time? Who knows? Like, does that even exist? I'm not sure, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like in the end, it's just what I've been thinking about a lot is just like, it doesn't really matter what the outcome is, really. It's like, I just need to make the movies that I want to make and like tell the stories I want to tell. And I'm still getting enough enjoyment out of that. So like, just keep pushing forward, do the day job, make a movie, however long it takes to make the movie, doesn't matter. Just keep going. And then when other things happen, if they happen, like if success comes, if opportunities come, then take them one at a time and not worry about like this big thing of like, oh, what's my life going to be? Like, does what I want even matter? It's like, I don't know, maybe it does, but you can still dream and still go after it. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that the last couple of days and like having this little internal crisis.
I feel that way all the time. I mean, like that was part of my breakdown the past few days when Colin was home was I was like, well, I can't make money and I can't do anything creative. And I love my son, but all he wants to do is watch YouTube videos where girls in makeup eat different colored foods. And like, this is not a life, right? So what would make this life just like slightly better than it is right now? And yeah, what is the key to happiness and fulfillment? And I think there's a lot of FOMO that goes into our goals as filmmakers. Like we see these trades announcements and we're like, well, I want to direct the Eternals. And then it's like, do I really want to? I don't know if I really want to direct the Eternals. But it feels like, yes, it looks exciting because that director is in demand and that they're getting paid. But is Chloe Zhao being fulfilled? I don't know. So I love that you're asking yourself those questions.
And then you think like, oh, well, if I got the Eternals movie, I would get flown to all these places, but I'd be making so much money. I could just take my family with me and it would be so great. But then you don't think about like, oh, well, my spouse has a job. Right. My child will probably be in school with friends. Like, do you really want that life for them? And it's like all these other like, another level of like, oh God, would that be the right thing? And then all you're fantasizing about getting the opportunity to direct a Marvel movie. And then like, will I take my family with me or not? And then you're like, wait, what is the crazy world am I dreaming in? Like, just write the script that you're working on, damn it. Like, that's all that really matters. Like, don't worry about all these ifs, ands, or buts. Like, just focus on the craft in the time that you have while your daughter's sleeping or, before you go to bed after you've worked all day. Like, whatever it is, it's just like focus on problems. The here and now. Yeah. Stop fantasizing about like what you really want in the world. And then like, problem solving for the fantasy. It's like, just work on what's real.
It's funny.
But speaking of what's real, don't forget to go and support our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast. And a very, very happy birthday to Bentley Heyman for doubling their pledge. It's amazing. It was so cool when we get these like little unexpected little notices from Patreon and they're like, oh, someone decided to like up their contribution. So Bentley, happy birthday. We really appreciate you.
I love Bentley. He's a very cool filmmaker and a good person. Thank you, Bentley.
Nice. I don't know Bentley, but I'm just going to say that Bentley's awesome because they're part of our Making Movies Hard family, which is all that matters. Also, it's today, AMA, happening. So if you're one of those people who listen at 7 a.m. right when the episode drops, you can go over to our Patreon page and become a patron. And at 2:30 p.m. today, we'll be doing our AMA. And we'll be giving away a big prize from our newest sponsor, Jambox.io, which is this new royalty-free music and sound effects company with an emphasis on high-quality cinematic cues. They offer customized plans to fit your needs. They also don't have composers that go on all the different services. They're exclusive. So you won't hear these tracks popping up on lots of other platforms. And also, starting today, and this does apply to everyone listening in the future, you can use our promo code MMIH when signing up to get a 20% discount on your subscription. So, without any more blibber blabber, let's go to my chat with Luis Prieto. Well, Luis Prieto, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So give us the elevator pitch for Shattered.
Wow. Okay, you killed me there. All right. Shattered is a thriller starring John Malkovich, Frank Grillo, Cameron Monaghan, Lily Crook, and Sasha Hughes. It is in the vein of Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction. It is film that starts like a beautiful love story of two souls that find each other, and everything's going to be really happy after. And then all of a sudden it has a big dark twist, and everything goes to hell. The protagonist, and by extension the spectator, find themselves in a big, crazy roller coaster full of violence, cruelty, and also funky, quirky moments.
Amazing. How many days did you shoot the film?
Well, I shot the film in 20 days.
20 days. Wow.
Yes.
If you can say, 20 days with that kind of cast, that kind of the mental look. I just watched the trailer. I just saw how many locations there are. I mean, that's a lot to do in such a short amount of time. If you can say, what was the rough budget of the movie?
God, I think we are under 5 million. That's
nice.
That's probably the number.
And then how did you, well, I know that you weren't the writer, but like, I guess, how did the idea come about? Like, how did you get attached to this project?
Well, let's say the production fell in my hands, through my agents. I read it. I felt it was a page turner. Once I started reading it, I couldn't stop. And as I was reading it, also I was imagining the film. So I said, I want to do this. And then like Hollywood, you said that one day, and then nothing happens for a few years. And then all of a sudden you get a phone call and someone says, hey, remember that script that you love? It has been greenlit. So that's what happened when the producers called me and said, well, we're ready to make the film. You want to make it? And I said, of course I want to make it. That was it. Then everything fell really fast into place, and we shot the film in the spring of this year. So it was a film that was done under COVID. So it was kind of like every other film that was made, challenging, but also that's what we did.
You mentioned a little bit about the timeline, but like how long did you spend working on the film from like, like the moment where you read the script and you're like, I love it, to when it's been released?
Well, I would say something, an important time that every director works preparing a film, and it's everything that happens in your life before that film. Like that already you have been preparing yourself for that moment, for them making the film. Then when they say, okay, you get the film, let's screen, it's greenlit, let's go. You have what is called pre-production. And in this case, I want to think that maybe we have a month and a half of pre-production. I think it was going to be probably a little bit less, but because of COVID, everything was more complicated and everything took more time than one usually would have done, for this kind of film, for this kind of budget. And that was it, maybe a couple more weeks on my own, with the DP looking for locations, with very, very reduced crew. But yes, this is kind of like, how can I say? It's like, a tour de force.
And then compared to all the other films that you've made, how difficult was this one?
Well, for good or for bad, the last 3 films that I have done, they have been films that they look great, all of them, and I think Shattered looks fantastic, but they were also done in very few days. So previous to this one, I did a film with Halle titled Kidnap, and that film we also shot it in 20 days.
God.
So that was crazy. We did have also like 2 more weeks of second unit photography, because it was an action, like a car chase. So basically there was a lot of driving and accidents and things like that. So that took 2 more weeks. But basically with Halle Berry, that is in every second of the film, she was there for 20 days, just like here. Previous to that, I did another film in England called Pusher, and that one was 25 days. So I want to say, compared to my last 3 films, it was average. Previous to that, I used to work on, I did romantic comedies. And I have to say that was interesting enough, even though romantic comedies are much easier to shoot than thrillers. It was also maybe different times, I had, or maybe because they were shot in Europe, so budgets were different, or who knows what. Those, they were actually 40 days. So, but yeah, sort of got to specialize in making them. I hope it's not my signature, but yes, sometimes you have to shoot it with what you got.
So I wanted to kind of jump back in time a little bit and hear about your start as a filmmaker. So I noticed that your first film was made in Spain, and then you went and you immediately made these movies in Italy, like you were saying. that were like these comedies, romantic comedies. So can you just talk about like how that all came to be, like how you ended up making a movie? Well, it makes sense you made a movie where you're from, but then like how did you end up in Italy making film?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I mean, sometimes life surprises you. And that was what happened to me. My first film was a Spanish production that we ended up shooting in Argentina. So actually I left. So it was a Spanish production, but we shot it in Argentina. And what happened is one of the producers who was involved during the pre-production, it was this Italian production company. So that at the end, they didn't produce the film, but they knew about the whole development process. So once the film was done in Argentina, I came back, I put my film together, and it happened to be that I went to Italy for a week. So just by coincidence, I saw the producers. They asked me, how was the film? I showed it to them, even if it was only film music. The film wasn't finished yet. They loved it, and they said, listen, we want to shoot a romantic comedy where the protagonist goes on a motorbike, and we just saw that in your film, the protagonist was riding also a scooter, and there is a love story, so we think you will be perfect for it. Do you want to do it? So I read the script, and I said, okay, sure, let's do it. You know, my Italian, it was sort of like not great, I have to say. I mean, I was, I spoke Italian and Spanish. I'm from Spain, and Italian is very similar to Spanish. It's not the same. So anyway, I was able to get through, and then just start pre-production, improve my Italian, get really good in my Italian by the time I was done with the film. And what happened is that the film actually became a huge box office success in Italy. It was actually the most successful film for many years in terms of box office. So anyway, that was my second film. My first film, the one that I have done in Argentina, wasn't getting released because the production company actually went bankruptcy before the film was released. So it just felt natural hanging out in Italy, enjoying the success of my second film. As a matter of fact, my first film, since the first film still hadn't come out. So, in terms of release date. So that's what happened. So I stayed in Italy making films in Italian, even though my first film was not a romantic comedy. Now I was making films in Italy that they were romantic comedies. So that was great. It was good for a few years, for a few films. I actually made 3 projects there in Italy. And just when it was starting to get a little bit, not boring, I wouldn't say boring, but just when it started to get like too comfortable, just doing the same thing, and I wanted to do those things, I got a chance to direct the English remake of Nicholas Winding Refn's Pusher. So that was the project that brought me to London and allowed me to shoot my first film in English. The film worked out very well. It was released in the US theatrically and then VOD. It was in a few film festivals. It was in Toronto. It was in Edinburgh.
Wow.
So anyway, it got me the recognition to, I would say, get me back to the US, because actually I went to film school in Los Angeles. So I went back basically to where I came from in a way, film studies in LA and all that. So then I was back in Los Angeles making films, and then one thing led to another. I landed in Kidnap with Halle, and that went very well, even though, again, in this case, the distributor had also some financial troubles, and it took a couple of years to distribute the film, even though it was completed. But, at the end, it didn't matter. The film came out, it did very well, and sort of like allowed me to keep making more films. So in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's great. Talk about how, like, after Pusher, what that was like. Like, at that point, you must have managers and agents and everything from Italy, but did you have to get new representation in America? Like, how did that all play out, like, leading to getting the movie with Halle Berry?
Well, actually, after I did my film in Italy, since it was so successful, I just went back to the States, because actually I was in the States before going to Europe to make films, thinking that I would be able to get an agent. But I didn't realize that my successful film, it was in Italian, and people didn't speak Italian in the US. So it didn't mean that much. So that was fine. I just went back to Italy and kept making films in Italy. That's why when I got a chance to make a film in English, and that was Pusher, I knew that was my calling card for making films in English. In this case, obviously in the US. So having that, done Pusher, it started, already before I even went to any film festivals. Already, I guess, it was attracting enough attention that I got a call from an agency in Los Angeles that wanted to represent me. And I say, sure, why not? Then everything just, one thing followed the next thing. And, before you realize, they bring you a script that you love and you say you want to do it. And you meet the producers. And in this case, Lorenzo Bonaventura that is a fantastic producer. He thought I was the right guy to direct the movie, and then got a chance to meet Halle, and she had seen my previous works. She saw my short film that I did before making my feature films, and she just loved my work, and we started working together, and that was how everything started. So yeah, one thing led to the other one, and I will say this because I mentioned at the beginning, before my first feature film, what really launched my career, was a short film that I made. It won many international prizes, I think like around 50 international prizes. And among them, it was the first Tribeca Film Festival. It won the best short film. So they say one piece brought together the next piece, and, little by little, you build something like a career.
Wow. So how long did it take to get the Halle Berry movie after you got your agents? Was it just like a couple of years, or was it faster than that? Like what was the process from like going from like your first English speaking movie to your second English speaking movie?
It didn't take that much. I want to think that maybe it was a year and a half. It was a film that came together really fast. I want to think that it took a year. I read the script, I think in February. Lorenzo Di Bonaventura told me that we're bringing the script to Cannes because he was independently financed. And I think the second day, Halle Berry had been attached before going to Cannes. And I think the first or the second day of Cannes, the film was already financed. They were able to basically do international sales based on the elements of, Halle Berry, obviously, that's the most important one, the script, the producers, also Lorenzo Bonaventura, and myself. And I think we were starting shooting in September. So it really came together really fast, that project.
Wow. So have you ever been involved in like the fundraising for any of your films? Or has it been a situation where like from the circumstances, you've always just been hired as a director for hire on all these projects?
Well, I work in many projects in a way, or let me say it a different way. So I make feature films, do also TV, but also do more personal projects like documentaries. I have done a couple of feature documentaries. And in the feature documentaries, I produce them myself, So in that case, I've been involved in finding the money for those projects. Sometimes they are commissioned, so it's even better. You don't have to look for the money. They sort of like someone calls you, hey, I got the money. You want to make the film? In my feature films, I was not involved in raising the money. They were, both of them, the producers were the ones who raised the money. The producers in the case of Shutter, and for Kidnap, it was Lorenzo Bonaventura and his production company, Di Bonaventura Pictures.
And then, is this all you've had to do? Like, since you made your first film in Spain, have you had to do anything else to pay the bills? Or have you been lucky enough to just make films and that is provided for your whole life?
Well, for the whole life until now.
Right. No, you can't retire yet. Yeah, I get it.
Well, I can't retire yet. I actually wouldn't want to retire. I love making movies. I have been a lucky person in the sense that interesting enough, as I was saying before, so I went to film school. After film school, got different jobs, and then when I said, okay, enough, I want to make a film. That's what I went to film school because I wanted to make films. So I did my short film, and I was lucky enough that it won so many prizes. And some of the prizes that were cash prizes that I lived very comfortably for 2 years. Now, keep in mind that I was a student. So students live very comfortably with very little money. But it was fine. I was extremely happy with it. But what I want to say is it's not like I won millions. There will be prizes like, 10,000, 20,000, whatever. But there were so many that at the end it became almost like a paycheck. And then I was so lucky. In addition to all the economic prizes, I also got the recognition to make a feature film, to write my first feature film. So I got paid for being a writer in the film, and then I got paid for being a director. And if it wasn't, of course, your first film is not like you make a lot of money, but you make enough to live out of what you're doing. And then I have to say, after my Italian film that did very well in the box office, that gave me some space to sort of relax and be able to keep being a filmmaker, even if I was just making a film a year or every 2 years. And I have been lucky enough of not having to say yes to everything and just say, yes, I want to make this film because I really believe in the film. So, but yet still live out of my films, live as a filmmaker. So, I'm a normal person, that just, is very passionate about his work and, it's very selected, but yet at the same time, I can do what I like, that is making films. So no side jobs in that sense.
After Pusher, I see that you did a lot of TV directing, as you mentioned. So how did that come about? Was that something that like you sought after, that you're like, oh no, I want to move into TV? Or was it more that like your new representation was like, oh, I can get you a job here, like it'll be lucrative, like you can just, this is a good thing for you to do for your career?
Well, it's very interesting because it kind of started all in a very, like an accent, in the sense that I got to the States, very rapidly I got kidnapped running. I knew I was going to do kidnap, I think in March or early April. That was going to happen after the summer. And I felt like I needed to shoot something for making a film with Halle and Lorenzo Bonaventura. In the sense that I have worked in Europe, in Argentina, in the UK, but not in the US. And I was not nervous, but I wanted to make sure that I knew how to make a film. Not how to make a film, I knew how to make a film. I wanted to make sure that I knew how was the workplace in the US. I didn't want to have any surprises. So I worked very hard to try to get a TV job, whatever it was. I hadn't done any TV in the US before. It's not like I could choose. So basically, I was able to find a very small project that, interesting enough, ended up being a cult series, that it was C Nation with zombies. I have to say, my agents told me, Luis, don't do it. Do not do it. There is nothing there for you to learn. There is nothing there in this project. There is no money. There is no nothing. It's a very small TV show. I said, it doesn't matter. I'm not doing it for the project. I just want to see how it's a set, how it runs in the US. To my surprise, it was pretty much the same that in Europe, but in English. So, but they give me the confidence of not having to worry about that element. Like, okay, I'm working in the US in English. And then, funny enough, the TV show became cult. And I think they have done like 7 or 8 seasons. So that was also interesting that this little TV show that I was doing became so big. I mean, I think I did like maybe episode 3 and 4 or 2 and 3, something like that. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to get there.
And did that allow you to make other TV shows? Because I see you went on to direct more shows after that. Was that like kind of the gateway to like open that world for you?
Well, in a way, yes, because then where I realized it became very obvious is that the TV was becoming a very interesting place to be. There were great projects out there, great scripts. And what TV has is that it's sort of like something very rapid that it happens, You say, okay, I'm interested in working on TV, and then, someone might say, well, what about this? Because they know that you're interested and they send you a script and you read it. And if you say yes, you're going to be doing this in the next 3 months. It's like it happens. It's something very fast. Where working in films, it's sort of like the opposite. You say you want to make a film, but it takes a long time to get to actually film to make the film. It's a much slower process, So there is something very interesting about doing TV. It's, it allows you to keep, making films. It's more than just going to the gym and doing exercise. It's actually like, hey, you're making films, and there are great projects out there. And I have been very lucky to work in some great series. And when I can, I make films. And when I can, I make TV shows. I don't really make a difference between one and the other. And I think actually lately, also because of the pandemic, we all ended up watching a lot of films or TV shows at home. It doesn't really make that big difference to me, one medium or the other one. Almost, I would say sometimes a TV show becomes almost like a Russian film from the 80s that is 3 hours long or 4 hours long, because that's what people do. They sit down at home and watch 3 episodes or 4 episodes. That's like 2 hours, 3 hours. They're like, well, there you go. We went back to Russian films, 10-hour films, basically. That's what the TV shows are sometimes.
Right. When you work on a TV show versus a movie, does your process as a director change, or is it kind of the same, but just in a different medium?
Well, it's very different in a way, because when you're doing the film, you start from the very beginning and you carry the whole process to the very end. You are the vision. You are the conductor of the orchestra. Everything is on your shoulders. Of course, you have the producer. You have many, many key heads of department that are working with you, but you sort of have like the big vision of everything. When you are working on a TV show, that sometimes it is true if you're doing the pilot, but even then, the role of the showrunner is more important than the role of the director, in the sense that it is the showrunner's vision. It's no longer the director's vision. The director is someone who works for the showrunner. It's sort of like making it happen what the showrunner wrote and wants in the show. So it's a very different approach in a way. It's also a very interesting approach, I have to say. I think it's equally exciting, works for someone's visions than for your own vision. You get to learn a lot and discover things that you didn't imagine. So it's also a form of growing, just collaborating, making films, making TV shows. It's all about collaborating and working with teams. So if you have a great team, it's fantastic because you're learning from everyone.
How do you manage coming into a TV show that's already been running for a little while and that you have to come in and sort of execute the vision of the showrunner, as you said? Do you do a lot of prep work, or do you try to make sure that you're following the same style and aesthetic, or do you try to bring in some of your own style and aesthetic to your episode to kind of make it, feel like its own thing within the whole show?
Well, I had both experiences. I had the experience of making some TV shows where they have been running. I did an episode of the second season of Code Black. So that was a machine that it was already running. It was a very clear vision of what the show was about. So literally you come in and you just fulfill the role of the director. And, it's very clear what you have to do. Everything is, there is a Bible that you can read and this is how it gets done. And again, it's very interesting because you do things that usually you wouldn't do because maybe, it's not your intuition to go in that direction. But I have to say, most of the TV work that I have done, it has been in shows that they were first season, and it has been always either the first episodes, like I just did was recently show in Mexico, All the Blood. I did the first 5 episodes, so you have to literally build the whole look of the project from scratch. Or there have been early episodes, and the way how sometimes TV shows are shot. I did White Lines, and I was literally shooting at the same time that the director who was shooting the first 2 episodes. So you find yourself that you have to interpret things that they haven't happened yet. What is going to be the look of the show? Well, there is no reference. There is no visual reference. There is written reference. There are conversations. There are images that we have in our minds. But it's not like you can really say, well, okay, I know what it looks like, So you have to interpret something that is getting cooked as you are cooking. Let's say, you have 2 kitchens cooking at the same time and you are both serving the same meal, but you don't really know what it's going to be until, the plates are done in a way. And so that's very interesting because it allows you a lot of conversations with the showrunners, trying to get everyone's visions and interpret it and just go for it and do your best. And I think the key is always working close to the showrunners. So you make sure that what you're doing is what they want. So you feel more, successful. That's the key secret, just working always very close to the showrunner. So it's very exciting because at the end of the day, you have to interpret something that is written, and being first seasons, it hasn't been done before. The show itself is trying to figure out what it's about, what is the language of the show. So it's something organic. So it's just, it's a very exciting project, I have to say, when you work in first seasons.
So I want to talk a little bit about your process as a director working with actors. And so the question is how do you like to work with actors? And then part 2 to the question is, does it change when you work with somebody like John Malkovich or Halle Berry, who's been doing it for so long and is such a big star? Do you have to shift, or do you come in with the same approach every time?
No, I think that the most important thing is to remember, to know that every actor is a human being, and every actor is completely different to every other actor, as every human being is very different from every other human being. So at the end of the day, I think the job of the director is to understand what you need to give to each actor, what they need. And most of this tends to happen when you're preparing the film. So in the case of Halle Berry or John Malkovich or Frank Grillo, you talk about what the character is about, and what can I say? I mean, Halle Berry is an Oscar-winning actor. She is fantastic. So getting to director is amazing because it's allowing you to also tell her, Halle, I think we should go more in this direction or in this other direction. It's even shocking when you have an actor of the calibers of Malkovich, Halle, or Frank that come and ask you, so am I supposed to go this way or this other way? So it's very interesting, and obviously your job is to keep in mind the whole picture. And that's sometimes what you need to bring to even the most prepared actor, and is to maybe say, hey, by the way, we're coming from here, we're going over there, just in case, you forgot. No, afterwards, they blow your mind because you are expecting something, and they're so amazing that they just keep growing, and they just bring you something that you couldn't imagine as a director. And again, with other actors, and in Shutter, we have Cameron Monaghan, Lily Krug, very young actor, both of them. They're amazing. And pretty much something similar happens. You prepare the film a little bit more with them. So, they're the two protagonists of the film, so there is more to prepare, more to rehearse, to talk about the character, where they're coming from, where they're going, what the film is about. And then sometimes it's just a question of, just giving little touches as you're directing, because, it's a machine that is working along. You know what I mean? I think it was Woody Allen who told to an actor that after having shot half of the film, the actor went to Woody Allen and asked him, listen, it's half of the film that we have shot and you haven't told me anything yet. Am I doing anything wrong? And the story goes that Woody Allen told him, well, you're doing everything right. Otherwise, I would have fired you already. That's what I got you. So there is a little bit of that, in the sense that when you have great actors, sometimes you just have to walk with them and enjoy the ride, and obviously work as a team. But, sometimes I don't want to say there is very little to do. You just do that before shooting, that's what you did.
How much prep time do you get with these actors before going into the project? Like, do you get like a couple rehearsal days, or like, is it just a couple Zoom meetings? Like, what is the prep that you get when working with actors like this?
It really depends. And I have to say, this film was shot during COVID. So that implied that, many of the readings we did then on Zoom, online. So we wouldn't, so we keep social distancing. We shot it in a spring. So there were still a lot of unknowns about levels of safety, what was safe, what was not. So as much as possible, we tried to do everything remotely. Then eventually we did a film with Cameron and Lily, that are the two main protagonists. We did, I want to think, like a week of rehearsals. Oh. So we went through every single scene and go through the blocking. Obviously, we didn't have the house to rehearse physically in the space, but I tried to explain then, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is what the location looks like. Let's expect this, let's expect that. And then with other actors like Frank Grillo is an actor that is very busy. So he literally came within like 2-3 days before filming. So basically you just sit down, have a meal with them, or have a coffee, have a drink, wherever is available. Just sort of go through the character and, and make sure that we're both in the same page, that we both understand what we're doing. So then when you're filming, you are on the run, so you don't have to talk about, oh, wait, I thought I was this, why was that? So it's kind of like clear, And again, we're talking of, amazing actors that they bring such an amazing background and work to the film that, you really want to just sit down and listen and just, see what happened. You know what I mean? Obviously, you prepare the character with them and all that, but I find it very fascinating and exciting, working with actors. And obviously, when you have actors like John Malkovich, you feel like, oh, wow, amazing. I get to direct John Malkovich. That was one of my dreams. And Frank Grillo, well, here the same, they're great, and as human beings, and they're fantastic actors. So it's really like, just great. Making movies is like the best thing you could do.
I wanted to ask about your process in saying yes to a project, because you said before that's like you read the script, you fall in love. Like, what is it about a script that will get you to say yes and, decide that you're going to devote like 2, 3 years, 4 years to a project?
Well, I'm a big moviegoer. I think my interest in films came from watching a lot of films. It happens to be that as I was growing up, I would go to the Cinematheque and watch 2-3 films a week, where it felt a lot. It felt a lot when I was 12. That's when I really started watching films. So basically, when I read the script, the first thing that I think is, am I going to enjoy watching this film? Is this a good film to watch? I read it as if I was the spectator. So if I think I'm going to find myself entertained in the movie, that's the first step to say, okay, I want to make it. The more excited I am about watching a movie, the more interested I am in making the movie. And then there are other elements that are very important. when you decide to make a movie, or at least in my case. In Shutter, it was actually, there were a combination of two things. The script presented some limitations, and those limitations felt just right in a year of a pandemic. So shooting under COVID, it was obviously an element that it was gravitating in my head. So finding a script with very few characters, that is very much contained, that is a thriller, really exciting. It was like, okay, I think this is a great project that I know I can deliver even under a pandemic, where we won't have to stop shooting because following the industry protocols, the risk will be minimum because we really have very few actors and very few locations. Now, that doesn't mean that the film is poor. It just is very smart. The film is written in a very smart way. So with very few elements, it's capable of doing a lot. It would be like, thinking of chess. Well, it's just blacks and whites, but yet, or checkers, you can play many, many games and never get bored with it. So it was a little bit like that, very few elements, but yet very, very intense and emotional thriller.
So I think with that, we have to go to our final 6 questions. I'll try to get through these pretty quick, and we only have 6 minutes. What's the first film you made, and how do you feel about it now? And it can be first feature, first short film, however you want to answer the question.
Well, my first short, it was I would call my first film, because I really wanted to make also a showcase of what I could do. And it was a short film where I had a love story, a musical, an action film, and a thriller all together in 12 minutes. I had all these elements in 12 minutes. So I was actually trying to make a show reel in a way, but yet I also wrote a story that it was powerful enough, as it proved to be with time, that it incorporated all those elements, and it was very exciting to make and to realize, wow, you can have all those things in a film. And in a way that also happened in Shutter. It's a great thriller, but it has also a fantastic love story. It has a lot of humor, quirkiness, and you work in a film in many, many layers. So it doesn't get bored, you don't get bored watching the film. You sort of like enjoy all the elements, because some of them definitely you don't expect it in that film,
And then what's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
Wow, I guess the best filmmaking advice, I would say this is the best advice for the first-time filmmakers. I think that it only applies to first-time filmmakers. So this is very important, because I would say after being a first-time filmmaker, this advice probably would be the worst advice you can get. But for first-time filmmakers, the best advice is just follow your guts and don't listen to anyone. So make sure, in your first film, everyone got a lot of opinions. Most people probably everyone has much more experience than you. So you could listen to everyone and make everyone's film, or you could just ignore everyone and make your film. And that would be my advice to first-time filmmakers. Listen to your guts. That doesn't apply for first-time filmmakers, because probably you want to see what everyone else has to say too.
And then what's the worst filmmaking advice that you've ever received?
Probably the worst advice, I guess it was in the form of a critique, and it's sort of like bears reference to the first one. When I finished my short film, I showed it to a group of 5 people, and they were all filmmakers, young filmmakers like me that were trying to break in the film world. And I got killed. They literally killed my short. They said that it didn't make any sense. They just didn't get it. So I would say that was the worst advice you can get, is like, let other ones judge your work, in the sense that if you think it's good, okay, it's good. You're right. If you really believe in something, you just keep going until the end. So I'm very glad, for example, that I didn't listen to any of those 5 people and send my film to all those festivals, like the Tribeca Film Festival, because it became the winner of the Tribeca Film Festival. So anyway, I guess that's the advice. Don't listen to anyone in your first films.
And then do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
Well, I guess my goal is to keep making films. It feels like, there are incredible careers of filmmakers that they're just keep building and making wonderful film after wonderful film. And that is really exciting. So I hope that's my goal, to be able to keep making films and hopefully have a very long career.
If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
I think I gave only good pieces of advice to myself. No, I think that I'm very happy how I landed where I landed. I think that I was quick enough to give those advices to myself. So I think at some point in my life, I said, like, okay, what is what I want to do? I want to do this. All right. So I just need to focus. I need to drop everything else and just focus. And that's what I did. And, I guess I took my own advice. So that was pretty good.
And final question, is making movies hard?
Yes and not, in the sense that, I think there are jobs that are much more harder than making movies. So in that sense, it's not. I think we're playing. We're just having fun. Having said that, also having fun making movies can be hard for many reasons. Sometimes because, I would say for the actors, they're playing with summer clothes, winter day, like in the scene of Shadow, where we have Cameron Monaghan and Frank Grillo driving a yellow convertible in Montana. Well, that day was snowing, but little that I know, it was too late to change that car or to put the roof, because we had shot the previous scene where we saw the car with the roof down. So we have to shoot it with the roof down in a snowy day. So was it hard for Frank Grillo and Cameron Monaghan? Yes, it was freezing cold. Everyone had gloves, hats. They had the kind of like clothes. So in that sense, it was very hard for them. But again, everything is relative. You put that with what other people are doing. That's not hard. That's, other people are doing much harder jobs out there. So no, I think we're lucky people. That's what makes movies.
Awesome. And then last question, where can people watch Shattered? Where can people find it, and where can people find out more about you as a filmmaker?
Well, okay. So Shutter is coming. It will be available in select theaters and on demand on January 14. So that is in literally a little bit more than 2 weeks. And then it will be available in Blu-ray and DVD on February 22nd. So if you can go to the movie theaters, if you feel like going to the movie theaters, January 14, and if not, video on demand, January 14.
So Liz, since you missed out on this one, I'll just talk about what I remember. So yeah, Luis was very fascinating because his first movie was made in Spanish in Spain, where he's from. So he went back home to make his movie. So apparently some producers saw an early rough cut of the film and then loved it and was like, yeah, you got to come to Italy and direct this movie for us. And so he just went to Italy, made this movie. His other movie didn't even come out for years later. And then the movie he made in Italy was a humongous success, a huge comedy splash in Italy. And then it was he tried to go to LA to get representation and be look, I just directed this movie. It's the biggest budgeted movie in Italy ever, biggest box office. It's a huge deal. And no one gave a shit. They're it's in Italian. Why do we care about this movie? You need to make something that's in English, brother. And then we'll talk to you. And so he made 2 more movies in Italian. And then for some random circumstance, he had an opportunity to make a movie in London in English called The Pusher. So he made that movie on a pretty low budget. And once he did that, that was what got him, representation in the US. And then from there, he was able to get Kidnapped with Halle Berry. His latest movie's got Frank Grillo and John Malkovich in it and stuff. And it's just now he's off to the races. And it's so that's film 7 or whatever, or 8.
Well, I look forward to listening to the episode, and I love the energy you're giving me with regard to the chat. It's it seems like I really missed out on a good one.
Yeah.
In other news, we have some news. We wanted to share an article from NBC, actually, NBCnews.com. And the title is Golden Globes Honor West Side Story Succession Without Stars or Live Telecast. It's actually a pretty easy article to summarize because it just basically says, we didn't put this award show on television. As you may remember, I think it was actually last year, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association got in trouble because they had 90 voting members and none of them were Black. And they were outed when the LA Times published a report on that. And so I don't know whether the fact that they didn't air this ceremony on television has to do with that, but they seem to be going through a redesign phase for what the Golden Globes is and who comprises the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. What did you think of this article, Ulrich?
Yeah, well, from my reading of it, it seemed like that there was this huge controversy. And then the reason why they didn't air it was because they didn't do anything to actually change it. They didn't make big enough steps to correct after this huge thing came out. So I think that was sort of why it didn't get aired. And it's the first time it had never been aired or something, or I can't remember, but it's pretty insane. But who cares about the Golden Globes anyways? No one cares. It's just it's like a precursor to the Oscars. that like, I mean, I feel like it's cool, like it matters, you know, like, I mean, obviously if I won a Golden Globe, like I would be fucking stoked, but it's like, you know, I think it's kind of like the, you know, whatever, the ugly duckling of award shows.
It's very silly. It's like the one, it's like, what is it, that the one that they like get drunk at? It's like that in the SAG Awards where they just like have a good time, where the Oscars still is kind of shrouded in this, you know,
pretentiousness.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I have to say, I hate award shows, but I love the Oscars. And I've seen every single Oscar that, you know, in my lifetime.
Last year's was terrible, though.
Every Oscar is amazing. Every Oscar ceremony is the best.
No, last year's was not amazing. You cannot lie to me. I've watched every one since I was a kid. I tried watching last year's, and it was garbage.
Well,
it was like a bad podcast.
Agree to disagree,
like,
but because for me, it's not about necessarily the show. It's about like the hours you sit in front of the television, like thinking about film and its legacy in the Academy. But the Golden Globes to me is kind of always been like a silly joke of an award show anyway. Yeah. So I'm fine not having it take up space on television. Can we use that money and those resources for something else? That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I would love to hear from anyone who's ever won a Golden Globe and if it's actually made a difference in your career.
I mean, it's got to, right? You got to put it in front of your name. Like, it's got to be valuable in terms of optics. But
how many times do you see a Golden Globe nominee on a poster, but you always see Oscar nominee on a poster?
That's true. You have to win. It would be Golden Globe winner, if anything.
Yeah, if you won a Golden Globe, maybe it goes on the poster, but I don't think Golden Globe nominees are getting touted on movie posters out there. But yeah, if I'm wrong, I'd love to know.
It's silly. I do acknowledge that the Oscars are stupid. I just love them. They're stupid.
Well, can you, I mean, I just really briefly, like, I wouldn't have to get into the whole thing, but like, can you at least acknowledge to me that like last year's Oscars was like not as good as every other Oscars that came before, even the bad ones?
I honestly don't remember. I have no recollection of last year's Oscars.
It was like they did it like in like a different room, and it was like really small. There's only like the people who were like nominated there. Basically, it was like a super small group. Oh,
that's right. And everyone was in their room with their like little bubble. That's right. They went.
And they didn't do movie clips for the first time in 1,000 years. They just interviewed the person. Like, not about the movie they made, but about their lives. So it was just like a little clip about their lives and like little like short little anecdotes. And you're like, wait, like the thing that you're here for is what we all care about. Like, you are here because this one thing you did, that's great. Like, I want to hear about that thing. And instead, it's just like, it's like if on this show, we talked about nothing but filmmaking. And we're like, yeah, I like oranges and apples and pizza's my favorite food. And yeah, that's really cool. Like that. I like to like do MMA, like, you know, kickboxing in my garage. Like, yeah. And that was like our show, and it wasn't about filmmaking. That's what the fucking Oscars were to me. Okay. And like, I turned it off halfway through. I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not watching this crap.
We're never going to get back to the Billy Crystal montage days the
2021 was pretty good. I enjoyed myself. I was super depressed. My dad died that day, but I still loved the Oscars. I still watched it with my mom, and it was like amazing that we got to enjoy it when it was like this huge, we're all crying, but it's like, that Oscars was great for me. Just like all the other Oscars are great, but like,
I will admit that the show probably wasn't its best, but I will not say I didn't love it, because I will watch every Oscar nonstop.
Well, you're more diehard than me. I'll watch next year. I'm gonna give it I'm gonna try. I'll give it a shot. But if it's the same format, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be very pissed. Anyways, some more interesting, exciting things. We have yet another listener email. This one from longtime listener Clinton Cornwell. Clinton writes, "Hey all, been rolling this question around in my head for a while, but unsure of how to phrase it. So here it goes. What is more important in advancing your career? The quality of films you produce, or having the connections to create new opportunities for yourself? Or is it both are equally important and you need them both? I guess it's a question of where we should be investing our resources, advancing our craft and skills in order to make that cream of the crop piece of content, or focus more on networking, promoting, so as to cultivate those nepotism relationships for when you make something. Is it 50-50 between the two, where we should be allocating resources? 80-20 towards skill and making an amazing film? The landscape seems to be ever shifting, so just curious about y'all's current perspective." So what do you think, Liz? I think this is a great question. I'm really curious to hear your answer.
Oh, geez. Oh, by the way, I like Clinton Cornwell, so I just wanted to say that to take up space. I mean, I feel like I am answering this from a slight place of privilege because I want to say, fuck networking, just go for craft. But I can say that because I have spent years and years and years developing my network to a place where I feel very comfortable with the relationships that I have. And I feel like I'm connected to really high profile individuals. They may not like me. They may not want to talk to me, but I at least know how to get places. So to me, networking is vital, but I don't do anything actively to energize my relationships as of right now because I feel pretty good about them. So the answer for me is everything should go into craft. But if you're in a place where you're starting out in the world, then it feels like it's a 50-50 thing where it's 50 network and 50 craft in Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a hard question to answer, but I think like people use this networking phrase a lot, and I've used it my whole career. I heard it in college. Like it's always been this thing that like, it's like, you gotta network. But I think what's more important and what everyone says is like, creating relationships, right? Which is like, should be the actual way that you talk about networking. And to understand what that actually means, like, I think like it's not really about like having a goal when you're talking to somebody. It's more like just making friends with people, even if it's like, just an email, a series of email exchanges where you like share about movies that you like, or like, oh, somebody has a project and you listen to them out and hear about their project and like you give notes on the script or something. Like, I think those kinds of relationships and like making sure that you're, active in your community and active within the people that you know and that you meet through your filmmaking journey. I think like that's really what it means to me now. Like, it doesn't really mean like, oh, I got to go to this event and meet as many people as possible and like, try to like whatever. It's more like, oh, is there somebody in my community that I may not know who's making a movie that needs some support? Like, oh, can I go to their event to support them? Or can I listen to their pitch or read their script? Oh, is like somebody who listens to the show, like asking me for producer recommendations. Like, oh, let me respond to that email and like get back to them and like try to help if I can. It's like, those are the things that I think I'm like focusing more in my like quote unquote networking world is like just trying to engage. Right. And like, yeah, I don't know, interact, I suppose. Like I just did all these pitches for my movie through this tech investor thing. And, most people haven't gotten back to me, but like a few have. And like, a couple of them were just like, sending each other articles about the Matrix movie and shit, and just like talking about movies we like. This guy's got a film blog. Like I'm reading his film blog and like, oh, wow, I can't believe you thought that about this movie. Like, or yeah, 8-bit Christmas is shit. Yeah, I tried watching it. It's terrible. I agree with you. Like things like that. It's like whether or not like we end up working together on something or end up collaborating, it's like that's like not important. It's more just like, let me just have fun goofing off with this person and like, discussing the thing that I love, which is movie making.
Sure. So
I'm going to say like, that's what I like to do. And I think that that's sort of what I'm hearing. Like we just talked to this guy, Milan, and like he was talking about going to a party at Sundance, for instance. And like, people are going around the room, like pitching. And before they even like hear your name, they like jump into their pitch, and it's like, he just turns off when he hears that. But it's like, oh, if I can just talk to somebody and like hear about them and like get to know them, it's like, that's so much more valuable, And so I just, when I'm in these circumstances where I'm like in a party, like meeting people, it's like asking the questions and trying to make the connection of getting to know other filmmakers. Like that's so much more valuable than like, yeah, trying to like edge in your next project.
I totally agree in terms of quality of connections, that everything what you're saying tracks. But I do believe that I get jobs because of the fact that I worked at Sundance, which is networking.
Right.
So for me, the associations I have, the professional associations I have with my name add equal value than my skills. I don't know if the people I work with have seen Speed of Life or Bread and Butter. Like the projects that I'm attached to, like producers that I brought on, I don't even know if they've seen my previous movies. So me, it's not about craft and talent in a lot of jobs that I've garnered. It's the presumption that I'm bringing value because I've got these 2 features off the ground, the relationships I've made, and the fact that I worked at Sundance. They perceive and anticipate that I'm going to bring more value to the project because of that.
I just think it's like really important to like make the movie, right? Or the show or the short or whatever it is. Like, I think that's like paramount. Like, if you're going to be a filmmaker and you're out in the world, like trying to get your next project made, it's like making things that you think are good and that you care about and that you can stand behind is like the most important thing. And all the other stuff around it is also important. But like, you know, like is tweeting about your movie 10 million times, or like, you know, going on Instagram and talking about your project, is like that time investment more important than like, you know, another draft on the script to make sure it's awesome.
But that's different.
Like,
that's marketing versus craft.
Well, he kind of wrapped it all together, like spending, you know, putting time into, you know, networking, promoting.
Well, I agree. I think we're on the same page that relationship building is really important. But where we deviate is, I think I'm a little bit higher on the spectrum of the importance of a network to your career.
Yeah.
And I put a little bit more priority on that, but that doesn't mean
specifically social networking too, you mean, right? Or you mean like
I think professional networking has been vital to me.
But do you feel like your time on Twitter and, you know, Facebook and Instagram and these places, like, do you think that's equally as important, or do you feel like that's tied in?
I mean, I became friends with like an influencer on Twitter because of our back and forth. And then I hired her to do a rewrite on a project. And then one tweet from her on anything we do together does get me more followers, I mean, there's a currency that happens in social media. So yeah, I do think it's important, but only if it comes from a vulnerable place. I became friends with her because I like her, because she's funny, not because I was like, I want something from her. But
do you feel like if you took the social networking aspect out of your career and you kept all the other networking parts or connection parts of it, the relationship part of it, do you feel like that would still have the same value? Or do you feel like your social media presence is like integral into like your filmmaking life?
I think it's integral, but that's different for me because I'm a recluse and I don't like to leave the house. And I say that I use the term recluse pretty loosely, but I think my best friend can attest I don't like to go places. And so social media becomes my way of navigating the world in this industry.
It's like your social outlet in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess what I think about the social media, what I've been thinking about a lot lately is this, like, you know, it needs to come, like you said, from a place of authenticity and a place of like you enjoy it. Like, if you don't enjoy being on social media, it's probably not worth being on it, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Get out while you can. Definitely.
Because, like, you know, you're not going to make the meaningful connections the way that you're going to interact with it. Like, I think, you know, you have to actually enjoy, like, spending, you know, whatever, half hour or an hour a day, like, you know, writing tweets or responding or interacting with people on there. Because if you don't, it's like, that's where the value and the joy of it is. Like, I'll jump on every once in a while and, like, you know, have a few exchanges just because that's how I want to interact with it. But if I tried to do more than that, I don't think I would enjoy it. And then it would be like defeat the purpose. And maybe the way I'm using it now is defeating the purpose. But, you know, it's the amount of enjoyment I get out of it, you know, so might as well give it that amount, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad way of looking at it. But
I think it's a good way to answer the question, though.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think make your goddamn movie. Like, really. That's the most, and then get your movie out and like put as much energy into like being there for your film as you can be. Like, you know, submit it to film festivals. When something happens to it, shout it out to the world as best you can, you know, like stand behind your movie. I think that's what is most important. But like, you have to have a project to stand behind. So if you're spending all your time networking and being on social media and you don't have a project, it's like, I think that's a problem.
I agree. Make your damn movie, everyone. And with that in mind, I'm going to close out the show with mentioning that you also want to support the International Screenwriters Association, who supports our show. They're an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through a number of programs they offer, including publishing your logline to a network of industry professionals. They have consultation courses, contests, lots of cool things. Head on over to networkisa.org. Going back to Clinton Cornwall's letter, you can always send us a question, comment, or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. We'll read it on the show if you do. And if you like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes. Check out the show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, social media, the way you can network and improve your career at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast. Thanks to Louis Prieto for coming on the show, Sam Anaya, and our producer Eric. Eric Toms, hero of all mankind, for being awesome. And thanks to our editor, Jeff Brymoot, for doing the editing. Thanks to all of you for listening, and talk to you next week.
So, without any more blibber blabber, let's go to our Take two, Jeff. So, without any more blither blather, let's go to the fucking Jesus.